Hey everyone, and welcome to a new video here on our channel. And in today's video I will show you exactly what happens before you ever see the first gameplay and how working together with us really works from the idea to the real development. I will show you the full process, very transparent, and later down the road we will also show you certain projects we've worked on, and we will show you why we made certain decisions there. And in game development you have way more to do than just opening up Unreal Engine and then all the magic will happen. No, it's not that. There are a lot of moving pieces, from gameplay systems to multiplayer architecture to the level design, that it also transfers your story. Like, there are a lot of moving pieces that need to get put together in the right way to actually bring up emotions when playing the game. Most of our indie dev clients don't have experience with coding at all and then tend to use AI to build up even big projects like games. And using AI is no huge problem because it can speed up processes and it can help people who always wanted to build their own first games to actually achieve that, even if they are just a one-man show. It breaks down processes where you need a full team into something that you can achieve even by yourself. However, what I've noticed after talking with like hundreds of clients and all that stuff, and also out of like personal experiences, and the big problem when working with AI is that people blindly trust AI even for big projects like game development projects, which are massive projects, lots of moving pieces. And it's a fatal mistake to blindly trust AI. Because if you don't have any understanding of the actual gameplay systems and all that stuff, one small change can directly break 5 others. And you constantly need to playtest the full thing, which is a huge... And that's why you at least need some experience in game development, in programming, to even understand if the code the AI came up with, for example, even fit to your project. Because if you don't know that, you will not notice if the code is, for example, not multiplayer replicated, or is maybe not written in the best possible optimized way. And like this, serious games basically need a solid plan, a solid structure, and especially reliable long-term people, especially in the development side, to really help you to build out the game directly in the right way. Because if you don't do that, then you need to restart the development all over again, because you at some point will completely lose the overview of your project and there will be countless bugs in your code. And that's exactly where we come in. We help with everything, from the planning to the development to the project management, and even later with finding the right go-to-market strategy to build up some social media channels, to get some crowdfunding. But let's dive deeper into the process and how everything starts. We will sit down with the client and try to really understand the idea. What are they creating? What should the player feel? What is the core of the game, basically? We try to really break down things as much as we can into a first MVP. And the questions always, which are important here, is like always the platform you want to target, if it's like PC, mobile, VR. And then also if it's like single player or multiplayer, because multiplayer games, for example, are way much more work because they need to get replicated, and you also need to set up or plan the server architecture in the backend. And then also things that are always interesting is like the world size. Many people tend to like try to build the biggest open world. However, if the budget is not enough to like set dress and to like build up enough towns and things to explore in general, like points of interest and all that stuff, then you can have the biggest world, but if you need like 10 minutes to go straight to like the next town or something like that, and there's nothing in between, it will be just boring, right? So it's always figuring out like what really works, and that is also a point where we are very like proactive and tell our clients our concerns directly and all that stuff. And then of course it's also interesting to find out the timeline of our clients. Like, do they already have a planned release date in mind, or also what would be their budget? Because I already mentioned, if you want to build a huge open world, you also should have a budget for building a huge open world. And of course nowadays with procedural generation and all that stuff, there are a lot of things possible to create huge worlds that also will look nice and feel good. But it's always important to take the budget and timeline into consideration of the full first scope or the first MVP of the game you want to build there. I always say in Unreal Engine development everything is possible, and that's right, you can do many different things, also in many different industries nowadays with Unreal Engine. However, the budget always decides if we can build a Fiat or a Ferrari, and both will bring you basically from A to B. They are just very different products. And what I mean with this metaphor is that we, of course, can check out your budget and what you want to create. And if we, for example, take the Fiat approach, the cheaper approach, then what we would need to do there is we would need to check in the Unreal Engine marketplace, for example, if there are already asset packs which we can use that are very similar to what you want to create. And if you want to create a, let's say, common game like a first-person shooter or something like that, there are many asset packs like this already out there which we can use and customize. And in most scenarios, that's completely fine, and also what we recommend, because it don't make sense to blow up the budget exponentially there and to do everything like by ourselves. However, if you want to have a Ferrari, if you want to have the full customization in the long run, want to get the most out of it, often you are limited into, like, let's say, the customization options that come with the different asset packs. Of course, you can combine asset packs together, but at some point, like if you combine too many asset packs that don't work with each other, you always need to pay attention that the asset packs are made in similar ways, and every developer also from those asset packs has a different coding style, and it don't make sense to just, like, I don't know, mix everything together. Maybe also with AI, then the complete code base will be complete garbage. That also don't make sense, and that's where we at some points also recommend our clients that it definitely makes sense to do this certain project completely from scratch, completely developed ourselves, because then we know what the client wants and can build exactly that basically. And that's of course, something for like bigger budgets. But as I mentioned, in most cases, and with like common games like, I don't know, RPG games, first-person shooters, third-person shooters, stuff like that basically, you can find a lot of different asset packs in the marketplace that will most likely solve your problems very quickly with just a few smaller customizations. And also, especially with limited budgets, in the beginning it definitely makes sense to break down things into a smaller MVP first, to get out already, to start the marketing, to get crowdfunding, to show the game to people on YouTube, for example, and all that. So we had our first strategy session, first call basically now, where we completely dive deeper into your vision of your project and try to understand and can already give you the first feedback for your idea, if it's like doable within the budget and all that stuff. What happens next? Basically break down the game into features. We break down the full scope basically in the first MVP. We will prioritize the different features basically you maybe want to create, like an inventory system, combat system, multiplayer, character customization, quests, and all that stuff. We try to break it down as much as we can and try to estimate the amount of work we would need to put in there to create those features. We will also check, for example, in the Unreal Engine marketplace if there are assets, for example, that we can use to basically quickly integrate those things there. And we will just work out an overview, a roadmap basically there, which we will present you in the next call. And the thing with those estimates is that many developers tend to just give you ballpark figures. You just tell them like 2 sentences about your game, and for many people out there on, I don't know, Fiverr and other freelance platforms, you will already get in budget. From us, this never will work like this, because how should we estimate a game where we only hear 2 sentences about? Could be possible that you, I don't know, have planned like hundreds of different levels and hundreds of enemies and different attacks, thousands of weapons, you know, like it's not possible to like give you a quote just based on a chat message or something like that you send us. That's why we do the strategy session. That's why we will check out and analyze your game design document if you already have one. And that's why we break down things so deeply, because quote from us is not just a ballpark figure we give you. A quote from us is an interactive website basically, where you can basically toggle on and off all the different features, which also helps you to prioritize, for example, certain features in your game. Because you already will see, the inventory, for example, will cost so much hours, cost that amount of money. Maybe we do that in the next milestone. And like this, you can really configure the game based on your needs, on your requirements, but also based on your budget. And of course, as I already mentioned, we will of course also come up with certain frameworks and show you different processes of like doing things. Because in development in general, you always don't have just this one way you can go. There are often multiple ways, and that's also the thing that makes it tricky for our clients, especially if you don't come from game development. You maybe don't know which of the both paths is the best one, right? You maybe see the simple path of like doing everything with AI and think that's the like best thing you can do to, I don't know, do everything yourself with AI. However, then as I mentioned, code maybe is messed up and all that. And then you also see the other path, for example, of creating all the code yourself and all that stuff, which is super expensive. But then we can, for example, show you also a third path of using pre-made asset packs from the marketplace and to customize those. Best of both worlds maybe, but it always depends, of course, on your project. But that's like what we do there in this first strategy session, and that is also what you will see then there in our quote, in our estimate. You will see different ways of doing things with our recommendation attached to it, and you can basically dynamically toggle on and off certain points to build out the game or build out the quote basically that it fits to what you want to create and it fits with your budget. Once you have the quote, you can basically do with it whatever you want. You can go to the next random freelancer and tell him to build out exactly what we have planned. However, you can also work with us there. And what would happen then there in the next step is that the plan basically is ready, but what we will do now is we will put a team there together just for your project. We will block the resources there from our 8 full-time team members or also our network of more than 300 freelancers and specialists in many different areas, from 3D artists, character artists, animators, VFX artists, UI designers, all that stuff basically. We will handpick the best fit basically for your project and also of course your budget, because we have senior artists that work for huge major brands, but we also have reliable developers with a little less experience. So we will build up the team then. Of course, our goal is not to just scale the team like infinitely and like bring in all the people we have there. Our goal always is to get as much done as possible within the limited time and budget we have there, and to just create the first MVP there for your game. And as the game maybe grows, as you maybe also get crowdfunding over time with our strategies, of course the team maybe can also grow or shrink, however, like what the project right now needs. And once you decided starting working together with us, we will invite you to our own platform Neox, which just launched a few weeks ago. And this platform basically is our own CRM and project management platform, everything in one place basically. So that we like this can share a dashboard with you that you can always keep track about how things are going right now, on which task are we working right now, how much hours are, for example, estimated for this specific task, and how much hours we already spent. And like this, you always have a transparent overview about everything we are doing. And this is so important because, as I already mentioned, game development is a long-term project, and you as a client always should know where we are standing with the overall project right now, if we are, for example, in the timeline we defined, or if certain things maybe took a little bit longer, then we need to maybe schedule a meeting to rearrange certain things to get things done within the timeline and all that stuff. So you need to have a transparent overview where your money and also time goes. And if you don't have that with your current developers, then that definitely would be something where I would need to think about. Because the way we work is not that we just disappear for a month and then you need to hope that we maybe at some day come back with your finalized game that is like how you imagined it. We work very differently, very close with our clients, because we also just accept a handful of clients. And we work in a way that we share frequent project updates, images, videos, all that stuff, just to show you where things are at and that you can also directly give feedback. And that's so important because, of course, we want to make sure that things are going in the right direction and that we don't waste any time there. And like this, you can directly give us feedback to make sure everything is in line. And as I already mentioned, we just work together with a handful of clients at the same time. And the reason why we do it is that I noticed back then also where I started building my first own game, I've worked together with many unreliable freelancers, and I also hear that very often from our clients, and I really dig deeper into this problem to understand where it's coming from. And the real reason behind this problem basically is that freelancers take up too much work is because they have a bad pricing model, basically, because you can break it all down to the pricing model. You can either work with a freelancer based on an hourly rate, which is, from my experience, the best way of doing things. I will tell a bit more about that in a moment. Or you can basically work with a freelancer based on fixed price. And many clients tend to work with freelancers based on fixed prices because they don't understand that in the end they even pay more doing it with fixed price, because freelancer also needs to add a little bit extra time there basically for revisions, for bug fixing and all that stuff. So in the end they usually pay more doing a fixed price project, but they just know the price upfront basically. So don't make sense, but many people tend to do that basically. However, the big problem begins when you maybe also negotiate the developer down, because then the extra time basically, which is calculated in, is not there anymore, and that will cause many problems in the long run. And also many freelancers just live from one project to the next basically, and don't really have the financial backup to, I don't know, longer wait for payments, for example, right? And that's a big problem if your milestones, for example, take longer than a month, or that that freelancer basically don't have a reliable cash flow basically, then that he also can't pay his rents and all that stuff. And what always happens there is that then the freelancer basically will check, okay, where do I get the next money from? This project I need to finish, yes, but I don't know, the client already negotiated me down. Maybe, I don't know, like there are always constantly new revisions. You don't know when you will get your money. Okay, what you need to do, find a new project basically, right? And this is an endless spiral basically of like accepting new projects to get money in back, which you need to pay your rent. And I know this out of my first experience in the first year as a freelancer as well. Unfortunately, I did the same mistakes there, but luckily I've learned from them and built up my team and built up the structures that this don't happen again. However, this is a very bad spiral for both the developer but also you as a project owner, because what happens basically is that the communication suffers first, then missed deadlines, updates slow down, and the focus completely drops from just focus on your project, for example, then to like 5 projects at the same time. And that's the worst thing that can happen there to your project, because if the developer just is busy with other things, then the progress will slow down so drastically that you maybe at some point need to switch the developer. However, switching the developer is also not that good, because if you switch or hand it over to the next developer, then they also need to go through the code again, need to understand what you try to build there and all that stuff. And if the previous developer was busy other things and all that stuff, then he maybe also just rushed the work, didn't comment the code and all that stuff, so everything's completely messed up maybe. And that's why the pricing model you agree with your developers is so important, because the big thing here, why we also work together with our clients based on a, I would say, unique approach based on hourly rate, is that exactly this can get avoided completely. You have a plannable expense because we will agree upfront how many hours, how many team members we need for your project, and then you have a plannable expense because we work, for example, 40, 50, 80, 100 hours per month just on your project. And we can on our end also block the resources of the team, of the developers, to fully focus on your project. And that is so powerful, because then you really have a reliable long-term team and can really scale. On the other side, I also understand that many clients, of course, also want to have the planability. But that's why exactly we do the first strategy session, to understand the client's needs, to then break it down into this interactive roadmap which we prepared. And that's also why we do, in the beginning of a month, do quick meetings, for example, to check with the client what is the goal of the month, what do we want to achieve. And then we also do frequent like checkups in like during the month, like as I mentioned, with the video updates, with the images updates and all that stuff, that the clients can see also in Neox OS how the time is tracked, where the hours are put into. And this transparency basically makes it impossible to, I don't know, do any stupid shit as a developer, because I also know from working together with many like customers that many people also made bad experiences there with working together with freelancers based on hourly rate, because it's hard, of course, for them to understand where the hours are coming from and all that stuff. But this full transparency we will give you there removes all those barriers, let's say. But now we talked enough about the process, how we work in general. Now I would like to show you a few real examples of our work in the past. And one very cool example I would like to show you is a video we did with the YouTuber CodeBullet. He back then approached us to make a video for his channel where he basically hired like 5 or 10 different developers and gave them $1,000 of budget. And of course that's not enough to build a big custom game from scratch or to do anything super fancy there. However, I thought, okay, it's a cool project, cool YouTuber, and it also it's a promotional thing there for our channel, so we put in, of course, bit extra time there, but we also needed to take the budget into consideration there. So as I mentioned, there's not enough like room to build something super fancy. So we did a plan there what we can do to actually make a cool project there. And the goal there was to create a RPG game, a medieval RPG game with a boss fight and like all that stuff. And I already thought, okay, that's an ambitious project, let's say, especially in this budget. However, what we did to make this possible is that we have a slightly modified version of the flexible combat framework there for ourselves, and we use this framework here that we already built out over the time or customized a little bit, and we use this flexible combat framework, did some polishing basically also like in terms of like UI and all that stuff that it not looks exactly like the real framework we used there basically, and then we also added in like or replaced the meshes from the characters, from the enemies. We completely added a custom boss enemy, a big dragon you need to fight there in the end. And also did the AI completely from scratch for that stuff. And then also built out a very cool level. We thought about a little like story we can tell there, had a little intro sequence, just something very simple with bits of stock footage, because there was not that much time to like, I don't know, animate any fights and all that stuff. But I guess also there we was able to create something cool with bit stock footage and a bit of like cinematic flying around in our created level there. The level, by the way, also had also something we put together with some asset packs. Back then in the past had it lying around there, so we quickly reused that as well. So you can already see, like over the time we have built up a lot of like, I don't know, resources, a lot of different asset packs, customized frameworks and all that stuff to relatively quickly assemble like games there. And like this we was able to just in a matter of, I guess it was like 1 or 2 weeks back then. I even was on holiday at the point where this YouTuber contacted me, so we really needed to think about like what's possible to do there. But from my point of view, and also like what people in the comments said, like the game, even if there unfortunately were a few bugs, as I mentioned, the deadline was very, very tight, so we was not able to like fix everything there. But from what people in the comments also said, is the like visually, I would say, best game like in the full thing. But if you take a look at the comments, people also say that it's the like visually best like game that where everything basically fits well to each other, and it's I would say most polished like prototype, like let's say visually. As I mentioned, there were a few bugs unfortunately, but yeah, those of course also could get fixed if the timeline would be a little bit long. And also in this project we followed our usual process basically. First understanding the vision, and then also the budget and timeline, and then we break down things into clear feature. And did, for example, like this, back then it was Trello board, now it's our Neox OS board. Basically we like split down the game into milestones, add in the features, add in the time estimates, and then basically track the hours that nothing is going over the estimated times there basically. We did exactly that, built up this foundation there using asset packs from our library, and also worked together very closely there together with the YouTuber CodeBullet, shared him video updates, images, and asked for feedback basically to further improve the game, to make it more as he envisioned it. And like this we tested and improved step by step. And also a thing here is that game development is never fully predictable. There are always changes and technical problems maybe that come up, new ideas from the client or from us that will come up and along the way. And it's always important to have good planning and honest communication and the right people to basically avoid almost all the pitfalls you can fall in. And if you are thinking now about your first own game, then definitely reach out to us. I'm happy to talk to you, to learn more about your idea, your vision about your game, and I'm happy to help you to find the right roadmap which fits your timeline, your budget, and basically also your ideas, your vision for your game. I'm happy to learn more about it, and I would be even more happy to help you realize your dream there of your first own game. That is what we do there every day, what's exciting about like waking up every morning. And that's also what you can see here on our YouTube channel. So if you want to learn more about game development in general, then feel free to like the video, subscribe to the video, and tune in at the next video. That's it for me for right now. Hope you have a nice rest of your day, everyone, and take care. Bye.